Shalom, my name is Tirsa Lewis with the Echad, Israeli Beit Midrash. This is a lesson for women. Today we will be looking at a positive perspective on winter, and we will be tying that in with the Proverbs 31 woman, also known as the virtuous woman or Echad in Hebrew, and looking at how that also relates to and ties in with our wombs. Proverbs 31 verse 21 says, "She is not afraid of the snow for her household, for all her household are clothed with scarlet." We are in the winter season. We are in winter. And it's a time of waiting. It's a time of hope and faith that what has been planted in the sowing season will come forth in the spring. I'm reminded of pregnancy and birth. There are two Hebrew words for womb that's used in the scriptures. But the one that we will look at today is Beitin. And Beitin, if we look at the ancient Hebrew word picture, it starts out with a beit. And a beit is a tent floor plan or a house. The second letter in the Hebrew word Beitin is a tet. And a tet is a basket. The third Hebrew letter is a nun, and a nun is a sprouting seed. So when we look at the Hebrew word beitin, we can see that the womb is a house or a basket, a house that is a container that holds the sprouting seed or life. It's a secret chamber or a secret room that's inside our bodies that carries life. So when a child is conceived in our wombs, or these inner chambers that we have that hold life, there's a waiting period in which the child grows on the inside. Until recent technology, the womb was a hidden or a secret place. You couldn't see inside of there. You couldn't see exactly what the baby was doing. It was like seeds that we plant into the ground under the earth. We would have to wait until the day that our child is born in order to see his or her face. David poetically ties our wombs to the ground of the earth in his psalm, where he says, "For you formed me in my inward parts. You wove me in my mother's womb." This is the Hebrew word beitin. "I will give thanks to you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Wonderful are your works. My soul knows it very well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was made in secret and skillfully wrought in the depths of the earth." That's Psalm 139, verses 13 through 15. So we can see here the poetic connection that David is making between planting seeds in the earth and life that grows inside the womb. Because he says that he was woven together in his mother's womb. And then he goes on to say that he was made in secret. Remember when we were speaking about how in those days you couldn't see in the womb, and how he was skillfully made in the depths of the earth. So when life is growing in our wombs, and when life or when our seed that we planted in sowing season is germinating, is growing underground, we have a season or a time or this waiting period of trusting in Yahweh that what was planted or conceived will grow in secret, and then it will burst forth in the harvest. So likewise, after the wheat and the barley sowing season, which ran from October through December, there's a time of waiting, a time when we don't see what's going on underground. But we know that Yah is making provision for our harvest in the springtime. We have mentioned two distinct seasons in Israel in the sowing season lesson. Haaretz, or the land of Israel, has two main seasons. It has the dry season, which runs from May through September, where there's hardly any rain, and the wet season, which runs from October through April. And the wet season is further broken down into three phases based off of the different types of rainfall and the different types and the different timing of rainfall that occurs. And we can see two of these types of rainfall in Deuteronomy 11, verse 14. It says here that I will give you the rain, Now, this word for rain is the general word for rain, or matar in Hebrew. So it says here that I will give you the rain of your land in his due season. The first rain, this is the first type of rain, the first rain, or yoreh, and the latter rain, or malkosh, that thou mayest gather in thy corn and in thy wine and thy oil. That's Deuteronomy 11, verse 14. So we can see the first rain and the latter rain, the first rain and the latter rain. We will talk about that some more. Let's look at the third type of rain in the Torah. We go to Leviticus chapter 26, verse 4. We can see where the fourth type of rain is used here. It says in Leviticus 26, verse 4, then I will give you rain in due season, and the land shall yield her increase, and the trees of the field shall yield their fruit. This rain is the Hebrew word geshem, and this rain is the winter rain. So let's talk about this some more since it might be confusing. So the first or the former rains is yoreh. And those rains would fall between October through December. So right after Sukkot, right after the fall holy days, right after the ingathering. And those rains would be for softening up the ground for sowing season so that, our people could go out and they could plant the seeds, the wheat seeds and the barley seeds. The heavy winter rains, or geshem, which is the rain we saw in Leviticus 26, verse 4, these rains would soak the ground from mid-December through February. And these rains were very heavy. In fact, the most rainfall that occurs in Israel is between November through February. That's when they get the most rain. These rains would also help fill the cisterns for drinking water throughout the year. The latter rain, or the spring rain, which is the malkosh, would help to swell the grain that's coming into maturity in March and April. So the latter rain would be necessary to help facilitate the growth, the fullness, the maturity of the barley and of the wheat that we would go out and we would begin harvesting. So there was three types of rain. And all of these different rains occurred in the winter season or in the wet season in Israel. On a rare occasion, it would snow. So the snow would happen around the times of the geshem, or the winter heavy rains. And Isaiah 55 verses 10 through 11 says, for as the rain, or the geshem, the winter heavy rain, and the snow come down from heaven and do not return without watering the earth and making it bear and sprout and furnishing seed to the sower and bread to the eater, so my word be, which goes forth from my mouth. It will not return to me empty, without accomplishing what I desire, and without succeeding in the matter, for which I sent it. That's Isaiah 55 verses 10 through 11. So we can see the blessing that precipitation brings in terms of the harvest. If we didn't have the former rains and the winter rains and the winter heavy rains and the spring rains, or the latter rains, we wouldn't be able to have a harvest. That would mean we'd have a drought and we wouldn't be able to go out and reap the harvest in the springtime. But it turns out that any precipitation that is given from the Most High, rain or snow, is beneficial to our harvest. Snow in Israel, however, is rare. So we can see from Isaiah 55 verses 10 through 11 that the Most High says he likens his word to being rain that comes down and it accomplishes, it succeeds in the purpose that his word was sent forth to do. And it talks about watering the earth, and it talks about making the earth bear and sprout, and it talks about furnishing seed to the sower and bread to the eater. It talks about all this productivity. It talks about all this fruit. It talks about the ability to harvest. And snow is a beneficial thing. Going back to our verse in Proverbs 31 verse 21 says, she is not afraid of the snow for her household, for all her household are clothed with scarlet. So it says here that the virtuous woman, or the Echad in Hebrew, is not afraid of the snow. It's interesting that the word afraid in Hebrew connotes pouring. So she's not afraid of the falling or the pouring snow for her family because she has prepared for it. Where it says that her household is clothed in scarlet, the word for scarlet can also mean the word double or second, depending on the vowel pointing. And it's the word shani. So we can see that her family is clothed in double layers. Instead of fearing the snow, fearing the cold, and fearing the winter, she realizes that this season has a purpose to bring about a harvest. So rather than fearing it, she prepares her household to live through it comfortably. I believe that the concept of preparation has to be a Hebrew concept because we can see this over and over again. It's part of our weekly lives. We make preparation for Shabbat each week. Would we fear Shabbat? Well, we would fear it if we were not prepared for it. But since we prepare, what need is there to fear? There's only a need to rejoice. Is this why the Echad, or the virtuous woman, is able to smile at the future in Proverbs 31, verse 25? Is she able to smile at the future because she realizes that everything is in Yah's hands and will accomplish his will? So just as the rain descends to the earth, so does the word of Yahweh, the Most High, descend to accomplish his purposes. And since she's in agreement with his purposes, what does she need to fear? So rather than focusing on the darkness of this season, the cold of this season, the snow and the ice of this season, the apparent lack of life on the surface of the earth in this season, realize that the season that we are in, this winter, this cold season, is necessary to bring about the harvest in the springtime. Just because we don't see life on the surface, have an understanding that it's been planted and it's developing underground, and that it is soon to burst forth. Philippians 4 verse 8 says, "Finally, brethren, whatsoever things are true, whatsoever things are honest, whatsoever things are just, whatsoever things are pure, whatsoever things are lovely, whatsoever things are of good report, if there be any virtue and if there be any praise, think on these things." Again, that's Philippians 4 verse 8. So rather than focusing on the negative or things that we perceive as the negative, rather than focusing on the cold and on the dark, let's focus on the source of the snow. Let's focus on the source and the creator of everything. Let's focus on the things that are true. Let's focus on the things that are honest. Let's focus on things that are pure and lovely. Let's be ones who focus on the good report rather than on the bad one. And let our minds be focused on virtue and praise and on splendor and on light. If we are good ground, let's remember that this cold, this rainy, this snowy season is necessary to bring about a harvest in the spring. My name is Tirza Lewis with the Echad Israeli Beit Midrash. If you have any comments, you could leave them in the comments section of this video. If you'd like to leave me an email, my email address is directechad.oneway@gmail.com. Shalom and Yah bless.